very excited to have this shir tonight. Very special guest, Naftali Horowitz, joining us. I want to give a big thanks to our host, Yeshivas Or Chazaq, who has always opened their doors for us to do yesharim. It's a pleasure to be able to do this shir. Chazaq, along with Torah Life, we've done a lot of joint programming together, and it's always a big close to work with Torah Life and David and all the great work that they do. This evening was sponsored actually by Torah Life to help put together the event, and all of the books that were given away for free at the beginning were due to Torah Life and all their amazing work. And we actually have some more books in the back. If you weren't able to get one at the beginning, we're going to be selling some in the back after this year. It's going to cost just $20 for today, which is less than what you would get in a store. So if you have a chance at the end, you can go to the back to get a book. It's a big honor to be here. Like I said, Chazaq does shirim throughout the year in many different places throughout the state and beyond. And a lot of people know them for their shirim, but the real backbone of Chazaq is actually their after-school programs, their Kiruv programs for kids, where we have programming all the way from elementary school to high school, after-school programs on Sunday and beyond, and different fellowship programs. And the big thing is they have a division called Public School to Yeshiva, where they've, Baruch Hashem, sent over 1,400 kids from public school into the yeshivas to help, enhance their Jewish learning and their knowledge of their heritage. Without further ado, I want to actually introduce before Naftali Horowitz, who come up, who's a amazing speaker and makarev and author. I want to invite David Batura up, who is the founder of Torah Life, to say some words.
Thank you everyone for coming. It was really a special time to gather together because it's been a long time since we've been in this room with our organization, 7 months to be precise. I've been a little bit busy myself. I actually got married 3 months ago. That's pretty much why I've been, I was actually, thank you. Yeah, so it's been a hectic time, but Baruch Hashem, we're back. And they say when you get married, the true you actually gets revealed. So let's see, B'ezrat Hashem, will we be able to carry on from our previous energy and hopefully come back to it with 10 times over. So as many of you sitting here know and have been with us throughout the journey, this organization started because some, I can say, not disasters or loss that happened in the family, and that's what motivated us to start an organization and promote Torah online and in person, but really in person because I'm told to use the mic. It's the ongoing issue that I have. I don't really use mics because it limits me to the place, but we make these events because we realize that there's so much Torah on the internet. WhatsApp, YouTube, Torah Anytime, Torah Anytime is the gold standard, obviously, but there's nothing that compares to in person, so that's why we bring out the room. An artist isn't an artist without a concert and an audience. So B'ezrat Hashem, let's sit in together, let's enjoy the experience, because the knowledge that Naftali Horowitz has to give is not just a Torah lecture that people can take away with sources, but also applies to our everyday lives through our finances. So let's pay attention, and B'ezrat Hashem, pick up a book in the end, and stay tuned for more events to come. Thank you. Without further ado, Naftali Horowitz.
So thank you all for coming. The good news is I'm not a rabbi. I'm not a Rav, I'm not a Mashkiach, and therefore you don't have to listen to a word I say. You don't have to go home feeling guilty, and because I'm unworthy of talking about such a serious topic such as El. But the truth of the matter is that when people ask me to speak during El, it's actually a tremendous opportunity for me because it forces me to reflect on the time of the year. And the Siyata D'Shmaya has always been astounding to me that each year when I speak during El, HaKadosh Baruch Hu opens up new vistas of understanding of this amazing time of year. So I'm just going to share with you some of the thoughts and some of the things that were revealed to me in the last couple of days as I sat down to prepare my words. So since I was a child, this was a time of year that I absolutely dreaded. I mean, the reality is nobody likes to be scrutinized. Nobody likes to be audited. You know, on Wall Street, you know, when the regulators show up, it's the worst week of the year. Everybody's running around. The banking regulators are there. The SEC is there. Internal compliance is looking over everything that we're doing. And it kind of makes me feel reminiscent of the way I used to think about Elul and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the Aseret Simei Tshuva. I'd get this pit in my stomach that, oh my gosh, this is serious, this is stressful, and so on. And who doesn't feel or breathe a sigh of relief when that final Kaddish of Nila is recited and we go like, phew, we made it. It's almost like the regulators went into the elevator and they're on the way down. But the reality is that it is an amazing thing that once a year we force ourselves to look in the mirror and to take stock and to spend time reflecting on what we did the last 12 months, how much we grew and how much perhaps we didn't. And any corporation or any bank on Wall Street wouldn't be where it was if there were no regulators and there were no auditors and there wasn't somebody coming to look over what you're doing, because it essentially forces you to be your best. I can tell you that when the regulators do come to my firm, we know exactly what they want. We know what they're going to be looking for. We get an email and it tells us exactly what paperwork needs to be in order, what our desks need to look like, what needs to be filed where, what questions they're going to be asking, and what answers they're going to be expecting. And I thought about it and I said, do we really know? Do we really know how to prepare for this audit? What are going to be those questions? What are they going to be looking at? What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want to see from us? We have a month to do this. We start blowing the shofar, the Ashkenazim at least. We start saying L'David Hashem Oiri to tell us you have 30 days to prepare. So what is it? The Gemara tells us in Rosh Hashanah, a very cryptic, very interesting, very beautiful Gemara, which I think in it, if you study it and delve into it a little bit, gives us the answers to exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be wanting to see. The Gemara tells us it's a Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. It's a Mishnah that we say or we relate to in the Nisana Taikaf prayer. Kol baya olam yavrim lefanecha kivnei morain. We continue with the words kivakaras raya edrai, mavir tsoinai tachas shiftai. And the Gemara says, according to the Tana Kama, that the definition of morain, kivnei morain, are sheep in a flock. The Gemara is telling us what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be judging us based on. He's going to be judging us based on how we performed this past year in the category of morain. So the Gemara gives us three definitions of the word morain. The Tana Kama says, kivnei amarna, like sheep in a flock, which is the definition or the translation that we use in our prayer. Rish Lakish says, Kimailois beis morain, the Gemara says. Like steps leading up to a mountain in Israel called Morain. I don't believe it's Meron. There are those that say it is, but there are those that say it isn't. Rashi tells us it was a very steep mountain. There was a set of stairs that went up. And Rashi says specifically, there was only room on each step for one person. So it was an extraordinarily narrow staircase. The third definition, Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel says, Ki chayalais beis David, like soldiers going out to fight a war, who belonged to the army of King David. So there's a beautiful Maral. Maral in Chedushei Agados explains this Gemara as follows. And we're going to use this Maral to try to delve into what are those aspects that we need to prepare for. The Maral says that the literal translation of Morain means sheep. And that nobody debates that, and that's why that's the way it's written in the Nisana Taikev prayer. He says that Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel are adding new elements because the Gemara used, the Mishnah used a very cryptic term. Mishnah should have said, we're sheep. Since Morain alludes to other things as well, the Mishnah meant to allude to other aspects of the Yom Hadin, being a staircase, a narrow one, and soldiers. So let's delve into this for a second. So in preparation for this, I did some research on sheep. Well, if the first thing we're going to be judged on is whether or not we're good little sheep, right? What does that mean? Right? Really, you say this prayer every single year. Kivakaras roya edroi mavir tsainoi tachas shiftoi kain tavir Hashem. We go by and we go meh, and Hashem's staying there with this stick. What's the analogy here? I mean, really, what is it? So I did some research, because if I'm going to be scrutinized as a sheep, well, I need to know what it takes to be a good sheep, right? So I did a lot of research. Turns out that people are very passionate about their sheep. I read from shepherds in Australia, New Zealand, the United States, and they all write about their sheep. And I try to cull the overlap of where everybody agrees the key characteristics of sheep are. And I came up with two things. The first thing I'm going to read you directly is flocking instincts. Sheep have an instinct to flock together. They feel safer when they're gathered. Sheep need other sheep to feel safe, and separating one sheep out of a herd creates a tremendous stress for both the sheep that left and those that remain. Quote, whenever one of my sheep is on its own, it's very sad and cranky. When the shepherd finds a sheep and brings it back to the herd, both the sheep that's returned and the sheep of the herd become extraordinarily content. That's beautiful. What does it have to do with us? Well, ladies and gentlemen, how many sheep left our flock this year? How many sheep thought that maybe it's better to join another flock, or maybe no flock at all? I think we're going to be examined first and foremost on what and anything we did about that. Were we stressed? Did we perhaps contribute to them leaving? Did we seek them out? Did we let them know that the flock's not the same without them? Or did we label them the black sheep amongst us? I believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to look at us as a herd and say, are you missing those that are no longer amongst you? How many sheep inside the flock are struggling? How many lost a spouse this year? How many lost a child? How many lost a job? Did we lose any sleep over it? Or do we just shrug off these things and go about our ways? Did we reach out to somebody and say, is there anything I can do for you? Let's just have a cup of coffee. Anything at all? Ladies and gentlemen, everybody is struggling today. Inside the flock, outside the flock. And in some way, everybody can help somebody else that's struggling, because each of us are struggling in different ways. We all know somebody that we can reach out to. But we're so insulated, and we forget that first and foremost, Klal Yisrael is a flock. And a flock is only happy and only content and only secure when its members are content and secure amongst the flock. And this, I believe, is first and foremost what we have to have in mind in Asana Toikif. We are sheep and we are part of a flock. I read an unbelievable story recently, which I want to share with you. The stories of Rabbi Pam, Zeichet Tzaddik Levracha. There was a man who davened with him in shul, and one day he noticed that he's not there anymore. And he called up his son, and his son said that my father's very sick and he's in the hospital. So Rav Pam asked his son if he can come to his office. He wants to send something to him. And he wrote this man a letter, a note on a simple piece of paper. And he said, "Dear so-and-so, I want you to know that I miss you in shul. It's not the same without you. Love, your friend, Avram Pam." And he gave this letter to his son, and his son took the letter to his father. 2 weeks later, the man passed away. He went to pay a shiva call, and the son took out the letter and showed it to Rav Pam. And he said, "Rav, I want you to know that for the last 2 weeks of my father's life, every single person that came to visit him, he showed this letter and he said, 'Look, I'm friends with Rabbi Avram Pam.'" Rav Pam left the shiva and immediately sat down on the steps and started to cry. His grandson, who told the story, asked his grandfather, he said, "Zaidi, why are you crying? That was such a beautiful thing that you did." He said, "It was, but how many more letters like that could I have written?" I'll tell you a story that just happened to me. I'm not Rav Avram Pam. I'm just a regular, run-of-the-mill guy. I was speaking in a certain community. And afterwards, a lot of people came up to me to ask me questions. And one of the people came up to me, and he tells me his name. And he says, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "No, I'm sorry. I meet a lot of people." He goes, "You spent 51 minutes and 17 seconds with me on a call 2 years ago." I said, "I did? That's a very long time." He goes, "I can prove it." And he took out his phone, and he showed me a screenshot, and he held it up for everybody, and I asked him not to, because then everybody knew my cell phone number. And it showed my number, and it closed at 51 minutes and 17 seconds. This guy's been walking around for 2 years, proud of the fact that me, Mr. Run-of-the-Mill guy, spent 51 minutes and 17 seconds with him. Right? How many times did we do this and we didn't even realize it? We thought, big deal, another phone call. I'm telling you, every single person in this room, without exception, has something to offer somebody out there that is struggling. We cannot get wrapped up in our own little myopic lives. We have to find ways to be mechazik the sheep around us. Hashem is sending us a loud and clear message. Sheifalach, you need each other. You need each other more than you know. I will make it so difficult until you appreciate that achdus and caring for one another is first and foremost on a Kadosh Baruch Hu's mind when he looks at us on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The second thing I found about sheep is that they always follow a leader. Leadership in a flock comes from two places. A shepherd, and there's always one shepsela who is more dominant than the others. And even though if the shepherd knows who that sheep is, he gets that sheep to do what he needs to do, and then all the other sheep follow suit. I think the second aspect of sheep is whether or not we are followers and whether or not we are leaders. Thousands of people have come to my door in the years past with all kinds of issues. And the ones that fall into the category of, I got myself into a really bad mess by doing X, Y, or Z, I always ask the same question. Who is your Das Torah? Who is your Rav? Who mentors you? Business, marriage, self-growth. And literally, I have never gotten an answer. It's always, I don't have one. Because those people don't come to me. The people that have Rabbanim, the people that have mentors, the people that have people to look up to, generally do not get into those types of issues. We need, every one of us needs to be a follower. We all must have Das Torah. There's no exception. You cannot walk out the door today. You cannot know what's right and what's wrong. We are so twisted, so confused from up and down, right and left, that if we don't have somebody who we turn to and say yes or no and listen to them unequivocally, it's impossible for us to reach our intended destination. On the flip side, we all must be leaders. Every single person is being looked at. The fact that you're in this room, the fact that you keep Shabbos, the fact that you even know what Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur entails, puts you into a small percentage of even the Jewish population. And you have to appreciate that every single one of us has an aspect of leadership in us. And this is not a time for false anivas. Whoa, what am I? I'm a nobody. I'm a balabas. I'm a kid. I'm a housewife. Call it whatever you want. This is where the Yetzer Hara gets us and says, oh, you're not such a great person. But the reality is that every single person who went to yeshiva or Beis Yaakov or keeps Shabbos, knows how to read a Pasuk Chumash, comes to a shir and walks away with something, has something to offer the vast majority of the world that they are dying for. And it's not just true for Jews, it's true for non-Jews. Look at what's going on out there. I speak on this thing called Vayimayin, which is Shmiras Einayim. And I get hundreds of emails from non-Jews who are watching Shmiras Einayim videos. And they say, this has changed my life. Thousands of people buy my book that are not Jewish. Why? Because Torah is true. Because we have MS. You have MS. And when you have MS, you are a born leader. And don't forget that. So we have to accept leadership and we have to become leaders. This, I believe, is inherent in the definition of sheep. Adds Rish Lakish another element. The staircase tells us the morale. Rashi emphasizes that there's only room on each step for one person. To tell us that just as we're going to be judged as a flock, we're also going to be judged as individuals. Because in the words of the Maral, every person is a world unto themselves. The Yetzer Hara has a very good way of either deflating us or building us up with false ego. He deflates us because we look up at the ladder and we say, ha, look where those people are and look where I am. I'll never be that. I'll never be him. I'll never be her. I can't compete. So if I can't compete, what's the point? I give up. This is all I hear all day. Self-esteem. I give up. I'm burnt out. Not from 40-year-olds, from 22-year-olds, 24-year-olds. They look around them. They think this is a big rat race. I wonder where they get that idea from. And they give up. Tells us, Rish Lakish, there's room for one person on each step. And all that matters at the end of the year is where were you last year and where were you this year? And don't fool yourself into thinking that you're better than somebody else because they're way down there and I'm way up here. No. They climbed 2 steps. You didn't budge. And that's all that matters. If you were born into a great family and you were taught Torah as a child, you were born somewhere up the ladder. You get 0 credit for that. All you get credit for is what did you make of yourself the last 12 months? And in that regard, it's 100% about you, not the flock. The Piasetzner Rabbi writes that there are people who look back at their lives after 40, 50, 60 years and they have nothing to show for it other than the fact that they got older. They have the same midot. If they were angry, they're still angry. If they're vindictive, they're still vindictive. If they were stingy, they're still stingy. If they were selfish, they're still selfish. And he says there's nothing more tragic than that. People just don't think it's possible. We hear about how hard it is to change a midah, how difficult it is to climb. Growth is so arduous. And Reb Nachman tells us, Reb Nachman of Breslov tells us, that when people hear about growth, about greatness, about climbing, they right away think, they don't mean me. Reb Nachman says this, he speaks to you and he says, as I'm writing these words, you are surely thinking, I don't mean you. I mean somebody else. Tells us Reb Nachman, no, I mean you. And I'm reading, I'm going, he doesn't know who I am. Because obviously it doesn't matter who you are. It does not matter who you are. Rish Lakish is telling us that all that matters to you is the rung that you are on and the rung in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu placed you with your nisyonis, with your upbringing. And if only I had better parents, and if only I had a better yeshiva, and if only this, and if only that, and only that, then, because I'm looking up the ladder. Or I say, I'm okay, because look down there. Look at other people. Like I told my chavrusa today, I should just get up and tell people, we're all good, because I bet nobody in this room killed anybody today, right? So we're all okay. But Reb Dessler tells us that every person is going to be judged based on their point of free will. We have to walk into Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur knowing what is my challenge. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from me and only me? Adds Rabbi Yehuda, members of King David's army. Sheep are more or less alike. Soldiers are highly specialized. If everybody decides to be a paratrooper or even an F-16 fighter pilot, no army wins a war. Everybody goes out and everybody has their tafkid. Rabbi Yehuda is telling us that we're going to be judged based on how we leveraged or utilized our uniqueness. Uniqueness, the Ramchal tells us in Derech Hashem, is likened to a palace where a king has people that do all kinds of things for him. There's a guy who mops the floor. There's a guy who gets to bring the king his wine. There's somebody who polishes the crown. And does anybody look at what everybody else is doing? Does anybody think that the guy who mops the floor, I want to be like him. I want to be the guy who polishes the crown. But the king is telling you this is your job. And he says that if everybody embraces their skills and uniqueness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them, then all of the tasks of the palace get done. Individuality is an incredible thing. But it's something that sometimes we bury because we want to fit in. And fitting in has its advantages in some areas. But in other areas, it stifles who we are and it robs us of free will. Because we are adopting other people's will. And in doing so, we're living a life that's not true to who we are. How many times do I hear from people who are in a profession or in some other situation where they are burnt out, they're disenchanted, they're sick of their lives. And inevitably, if you trace back, they're not living their life. They're living somebody else's life. They think that this is what is expected of them, and this is what it is. And somebody once said to me, well, the Torah gives us rules. Well, absolutely. The government also gives us rules. But within the rules of the Torah, look at the incredible amount of individuality that we have amongst us. Look at the people that have changed the world using their individuality, their talents, their skill sets. Because that's the only way a person can thrive, is if they are being who they are and who HaKadosh Baruch Hu intended them to be. We should not give away our free will. We should realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants each of us to be exactly the way He created us and not try to be anybody else other than that. We look to other people as role models, but we're not carbon copies of anybody, and we should never try to be. I think the second aspect of this, I'll share with you a mitziv. The Netziv in his Akdama to Parshas Bereshis says an unbelievable thing. I said this over on Tisha B'Av, and people called me up and they said this Netziv literally changed their lives. The Netziv writes that the book of Bereshis is called Sefer Yesharim. We find many, many references to that. Halahi Ksuva al Sefer HaYashar, Pasuk in Yeshaya. Thomas Nafshi Mois Yesharim refers to the Avis HaKdoshim, the words of Bilam. And he wants to know, what does the word yesharim mean? What does it mean to be a yashar? A yashar means somebody who's straight. Straight with what? What's the definition of yashar? And what's the opposite of yashar? And why is Bereshis called Sefer Yesharim? Tells us the Netziv. Bilam Harasha states the words Thomas Nafshi Mois Yesharim. No matter how I live my life, I want to die a Yashar, referring to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. What is the definition of Yashar? It tells us in Netziv. Somebody who is aligned with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's intention for creation, which is the continuation and the success of all mankind. We find that Avraham Avinu davens for Sdoim, even though Sdoim was the exact opposite of everything he stood for. Yitzchak Avinu tries to make peace with Avimelech. Lavan and Yaakov, even after all those years, they part on good terms. And he says, because the Avos HaKdoshim understood that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a world in balance, and that each of us needs each other, Jew and non-Jew. His words are, we can learn so much from the Avos HaKdoshim to see what we can learn so that the world can continue to exist. Bilam was the opposite of that. Bilam wanted to uproot an entire nation. Hitler Yamach Shemoy wanted to kill and destroy a nation. This is the opposite of Yashar. Rabbi Yehuda is telling us that when one person thinks thoughts about somebody else, thoughts of arrogance, thoughts of gaiva, I'm better than them, for whatever reason. Chazal tell us that when Cain killed Hevel, he didn't realize that he killed Hevel. You have to realize nobody had ever been killed before. Right? Can you kill a table? No, you can't kill a table. How do you know that? Because somebody tried. Tables don't die. Who said people die? Who said? Well, somebody tried it and they realized people die. Chazal tell us that when Cain killed Hevel, he just wanted to inflict damage to him because he was so jealous of him and he hated him so much. And whatever he did, Hevel fell to the ground and Cain began to cry. And he kept saying, Hevel, wake up, my brother, wake up. Chazal tell us he did this for 3 days. He kept thinking that maybe Hevel will wake up. Maybe he's in a sleep. Maybe he's hurt. He had no idea. And after 3 days, he realized that Hevel's not coming back. And he cried and cried and cried. Chazal tell us that the heavens and the earth cried with him. Because Cain was the first person to take the world out of its equilibrium. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a Cain and a Hevel. He created a son who works the sheep and the flocks and the one who works the ground. And there's a balance. And with one there isn't the other, and with the other there isn't the other. And when that went out of balance, the world went out of balance. Yashar means that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this person, this nation, This individual, he is bringing this world into balance. Who's to say who's important? Just because you're a paratrooper and he's a foot soldier. There is no paratroopers if there are no foot soldiers. There is no generals if there are no lieutenants. We have so much pirud amongst us now. So much sinas chinam. So much divisiveness. You can mamish cry. It's unbelievable. What's going on in Eretz Yisrael? What's going on in America? Somebody's a little bit different. He wears a different yarmulke. He doesn't wear a yarmulke. And right away the thoughts start going. What do we need such people for? We'd be better off without them. And it's not just about Jews, it's non-Jews too. They're also divided. Is this a life of yesharim? Is this what is this what the Avos HaKadoshim wanted? Is this what Bilam wanted to die for? But we can't worry about the world. We can only worry about what's in here. What's in here? When they go out as an army, when a team takes the field, baseball, football, I don't care what it is, right? Their success depends on their teamwork. And if one guy thinks he's the cool dude on the team, well, nobody wants to play with this guy because that destroys a team. And the world of humanity is a team. And we are going to be judged based on our outlook and the way we think about others. This is what Kechayel Space David means. Yes, we're different. Yes, we're in different positions. Yes, we're on different rungs. But that doesn't give us the right to think less of anybody else. So let's recap. 1, we care about the flock. Every member that it's comprised of. Every single person should accept upon themselves to do for others in any way, shape, or form. There's no better merit on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur as to be one who is a matzik es harabim, somebody who is needed by others. A great rabbi who lived to be almost 100 once told me, every year in Yom Kippur he would say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, look how many people need me. If you take me away, how many people will suffer? Make yourself extraordinarily crucial to other people, to the flock. It's the best strategy for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. We have to each accept a shepherd, and we have to become shepherds ourselves. We can all be role models, and we must accept that role right here and right now. Remember, no matter how old or young you are, Rabbi Nachman tells us it's possible. It's possible to grow. It's possible to look back 12 months from now and say, I climbed a rung on the ladder. Embrace your individuality. Utilize it to make the world around you a better place. And remember that the world needs every one of us, and none of us is more vital than anyone else. Thank you for listening.